My name is Serena Calloway, and I was 27 years old the morning my father stole my passport at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. I had 2 suitcases, a gray travel wallet, and a medical fellowship letter folded inside the front pocket of my coat, like it was something fragile, enough to bruise. My flight to Copenhagen was supposed to leave at 9:10 that morning, on October 14, and I remember that because my father kept looking at the departure board, like the time itself was insulting him. He hugged me near the security line, held me too tightly, and whispered, "Good daughters don't leave their fathers." 5 minutes later, my passport was gone. 31 calls to my parents went unanswered, while I stood under the fluorescent lights with my boarding pass in one hand and my future slipping, out of reach. I did not know yet that an airport supervisor would hand me a paper napkin, that I would write one word on it with a shaking hand, or that the paper trail from that morning would matter 7 years later in a room full of lawyers. I only knew my father had taken the one thing that could get me out. And someday, he would sit across a polished table from me and need the one thing he thought he had trained me to give. Welcome back to By Then I Knew, where quiet stories finally get told in full. If you have ever been treated like the dependable one, the easy one, the daughter who should swallow disappointment because everyone else's comfort came first, this story is for you. Stay with me, because this is not a story about shouting louder than the people who hurt you. It is about watching carefully, keeping records, and waiting until the right document reaches the right table. My father, Calvin Calloway, did not look like the kind of man people warned you about. That was part of the problem. He was handsome in a careful church directory way, always clean-shaven, always in pressed shirts. He had a voice people trusted before they knew him. At restaurants, servers leaned in when he spoke. At the bank, managers came out from behind their desks. At family funerals, he was the man who put one hand on somebody's shoulder and said, "We'll handle it." And we did handle it. By we, I mean me. My younger brother, Bennett, was 2 years behind me and somehow always 5 years younger in everybody's mind. If he missed school, he was overwhelmed. If I got a fever, I was dramatic unless I could still make dinner. If he wrecked the car, Daddy said boys made mistakes. If I scraped the bumper backing out of the driveway, he made me pay for the repair out of my summer job money and told me responsibility started at home. My mother, Marlene, floated through our house with a dish towel over one shoulder and apology in her eyes. She had a way of softening my father's words without ever disagreeing with them. "Your daddy's just worried. He didn't mean it that way. You know how he gets when he feels left out." That last one came up a lot. If I studied late at the kitchen table, my father would come in, open the refrigerator, stand there in the light, and ask, "Who are you trying to impress?" I would say, "Nobody. I have a chemistry test." He would shut the refrigerator too hard and say, "Just remember, books don't visit you when you're old." I was 16 the first time he said that. I remember because I had a vocabulary quiz the next morning, and my grandmother, Eleanor Calloway, was sitting by the window shelling pecans into a blue ceramic bowl. She looked up at him and said, "Neither do children you chain to the porch." The kitchen went quiet. My father smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Mama, don't start." Grandmother Eleanor did not start. That was never her style. She just went back to the pecans and said, "I didn't have to. You already did." She was my father's mother, and the only person in our family who could make him uncomfortable without raising her voice. She lived in a white house outside Savannah, on land that had been in the Calloway family longer than anybody cared to explain honestly. There were live oaks in the yard, a gravel drive, and a back porch with 2 rocking chairs that faced a stand of pines. When I was little, I thought that house was magic. When I got older, I realized people called houses magic when nobody wanted to talk about money. The property was held in a family trust. I knew that much. My father talked about it when he wanted to sound important, and went silent about it when anyone asked specifics. He called it family land, like the phrase itself answered every question. To me, it was mostly where Grandmother Eleanor kept lemonade in a glass pitcher, gave me medical encyclopedias from library sales, and told me, "If you want to know what someone is doing, watch what they protect." That word stayed with me, watch. I did not know then that I would write it on a napkin years later. with my passport missing and my father refusing to answer the phone. I became a doctor because I liked facts that did not care who was louder. A heart murmur sounded like a heart murmur, whether the parent was rich or poor, polite or difficult, frightened or angry. A chart had dates. A lab value had numbers. A consent form either had a signature or it did not. I liked the way medicine forced people to slow down and name what was actually happening. My father hated that, not openly, not in a way he would admit. When I got into medical school, he threw a party. There was a sheet cake from Publix with "Congratulations, Serena" written in blue icing. My mother made baked ziti. Bennett showed up late, ate 2 plates, and asked if becoming a doctor meant I would finally stop acting like everybody else was lazy. My father laughed, like Bennett had made a charming joke. Then he put his arm around me in front of our relatives and said, "We always knew our Serena would make the family proud. Our Serena." That was how he talked when my success could be displayed. Later that night, after everyone left and I was rinsing wine glasses at the sink, he stood behind me and said, "Now don't get carried away." I turned off the water. "With what?" He picked a crumb off the counter. "All this school, all these ideas. A woman can get educated without forgetting where she belongs." My mother was wrapping leftovers in foil. Her hands paused for 1 second. Then she kept wrapping. I should have known then. Not because the sentence was new. It wasn't. But because nobody looked surprised. I spent my 20s becoming very good at doing hard things without making them look hard. Medical school, residency, nights where I slept in my car for 40 minutes because going home and coming back seemed impossible. Parents crying in exam rooms, tiny babies with blue lips, toddlers with surgical scars down their chests. I went into pediatric cardiology because I could not get away from the idea that a small heart could be fighting that hard and still be dismissed as fragile. During residency, I got used to being tired. I got used to being underestimated. I got used to men calling me sweetheart right before asking if the real doctor was available. What I never got used to was my father acting like my exhaustion belonged to him. He called during rounds. He called during overnight shifts. He called to ask if I could explain his cholesterol medication, then interrupted every answer. He called because my mother was upset. He called because Bennett needed money. He called because grandmother Eleanor had been difficult, which usually meant she had said no to him. If I did not answer, I got a text. "Must be nice to be too important for your family." Then my mother would call. "Just call him back, Serena. You know he worries." The fellowship in Copenhagen came during the last year of my cardiology training. It was the kind of opportunity I had read about before I ever believed people like me could get one. A year in Denmark, working with a congenital heart disease team that had published research I had carried around in a folder for years. I applied quietly. I did not tell my family until I had been accepted because I already knew they could make waiting feel like betrayal. The acceptance email came at 5:18 in the morning while I was sitting in a hospital stairwell drinking vending machine coffee. I read it 3 times. Then I pressed the phone to my chest like the words might fall out if I moved too quickly. I called grandmother Eleanor first. She was 83 by then, her voice thinner but still sharp enough to cut thread. "I got it," I said. She did not ask what, she knew. "Well," she said, "then I guess you better go." I laughed and cried at the same time. "Daddy is going to be upset. Your father has been upset since 1979, she said. "Don't schedule your life around it." A week later, I drove to Savannah to tell my parents in person. My mother cried, but not the way I hoped. She cried like I had announced an illness. "A whole year," she said, "at least a year, maybe 2, depending on the research track." My father sat very still at the head of the dining table. He had not touched the pork chops my mother made because company was coming, even though I was not company. I was their daughter, home for one night with a suitcase in the hallway. "Copenhagen," he said. "Europe, yes." He wiped his mouth with a napkin, though he had not eaten. And who exactly encouraged this? No one encouraged it. I applied. Bennett snorted. He was 30 years old, recently engaged to a woman named Lexi, who sold luxury candles online and used words like alignment when she meant money. He leaned back in his chair and said, "So you're running off to play fancy doctor." I looked at him. "It is a clinical fellowship." "Sure." My father lifted one hand. Bennett went a quiet, but only because he knew the main performance belonged to our father. Daddy looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "What about your mother?" My mother looked down at her plate. "What about her?" I asked. "She needs you. She has you." His eyes hardened. "Don't get smart. I'm not being smart. I'm saying she has a husband. Bennett lives 20 minutes away. Aunt Deirdre is nearby. There are options." Bennett laughed again. "Listen to Dr. Options." My father ignored him. "A year won't kill your dream." That sentence landed softly enough that a stranger might have missed the hook inside it. My mother reached across the table and touched my wrist. "Maybe you could defer just 1 year. Your father's been under so much pressure with the land and your grandmother and Bennett's project." Bennett sat up. "My project is fine." No one looked at him. I said, "I am not deferring." The room changed. It was not dramatic. No plates broke. No one stood. But something in my father's face closed, like a door being locked from the inside. He smiled. "That was worse." "Well," he said, "then we will support you." My mother let out a breath. Bennett rolled his eyes. I wanted to believe him. That is embarrassing to admit. But it is true. I wanted my father to surprise me. I wanted him to buy the ugly outlet adapters from the airport store and complain about the price. I wanted my mother to tuck snacks into my bag and cry at security. I wanted one clean memory before I left. For the next month, my father was almost kind. He asked about my flight. He told people at church, "Our daughter is taking a fellowship overseas." He corrected one man who said, "Your girl's going abroad," by saying, "Doctor, our daughter is a doctor." I carried that correction around like a small gift. Even though I should have known gifts from my father usually had strings tied under the ribbon. The night before my flight, I stayed at my parents' house because Daddy insisted it made sense. Hartsfield-Jackson was closer to them than to my apartment, and my flight was early. My mother made chicken and rice. Bennett did not come by but texted me a thumbs-up emoji and nothing else. I packed at the kitchen table because my old bedroom had become a storage room for my mother's seasonal wreaths. My passport was in a gray leather travel wallet. My grandmother had given me the wallet 2 weeks before, along with a navy passport cover. "Keep your documents where only you can reach them," she said. "I'm 27, Grandma, and your father is 59. She looked at me over her glasses. I put the passport in the cover in the wallet, and the wallet in the inside pocket of my tote. That night, while I was checking my printed itinerary, my father came into the kitchen and picked up the travel wallet. I noticed because he did not ask. He turned it over in his hands. "This is nice. Grandma gave it to me." Of course she did. There was a tone in his voice I could not place. I held out my hand. He gave it back after a second too long. I filed that away, but I did not know what shelf to put it on yet. The next morning was cold enough that my mother made me wear the coat she said looked more professional, even though I told her I would be dragging luggage through an airport and did not need to impress the TSA. She packed me biscuits wrapped in foil. My father carried both suitcases to the car. He was cheerful on the drive, too cheerful. He talked about traffic. He complained about airport parking. He asked whether Danish people ate normal breakfast. My mother sat in the back seat, even though there was room in front, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. When we reached departures, my father parked in the short-term lot instead of dropping me at the curb. "I'll walk you in," he said. "I can manage. I know you can manage. Serena, let your father walk you in." That was how he made control sound like affection. Inside the terminal, everything smelled like coffee, floor cleaner, and early morning stress. Wheels clicked over tile. A child cried near a baggage scale. A man in a Braves cap argued with an airline agent about a connection to Denver. My father lifted my big suitcase onto the scale like he wanted witnesses. "My daughter is going to Copenhagen," he told the agent. The agent smiled. "That's wonderful." I watched him enjoy her approval. My first document check was at the airline counter. I took out my passport. The agent scanned it. My boarding pass printed. She tagged my suitcase and slid the passport back toward me. "Gate F12, she said. "Boarding starts at 8:30. I put the passport back in the gray travel wallet. The wallet went into the outer pocket of my tote because my hands were full with my boarding pass, coat, carry-on handle, and the foil-wrapped biscuits my mother kept trying to make me take. That detail stayed with me. At the time, it meant nothing. Near the security entrance, my mother hugged me first. She smelled like lavender hand cream and anxiety. "Call when you land," she said. "I will. Call before you board too." "Mom, I know." Then my father stepped forward. He put both arms around me and pulled me in tight, too tight to move. His right hand was between my shoulder blades. His left hand pressed against the side of my tote. His mouth was close to my ear. Good daughters don't leave their fathers. I pulled back. He was smiling. "What?" He patted my cheek once like I was a child. "You heard me." My mother looked at the floor. "Daddy, what does that mean?" "It means think about what you're doing." "I have thought about it." His smile thinned. "We'll see." I should have opened my bag right there. I should have checked the pocket. But people were moving around us, and my mother was crying, and my father was watching me with that calm, injured expression he used when he wanted me to feel cruel for noticing cruelty. So I turned toward security. The first TSA officer looked at my boarding pass and said, "Passport?" I reached into the outer pocket. My fingers touched gum wrappers, a pen, my phone charger, no wallet. I checked the main compartment. Stethoscope, sweater, folder, laptop, biscuits. No wallet. I stepped out of line. The people behind me sighed. I checked again, then again. There is a specific kind of fear that starts in your hands before it reaches your chest. My fingers went cold. My ears started ringing. I turned around. My parents were gone, not walking away, not near the escalator. Gone. I called my father. No answer. I called my mother. No answer. I called again. No answer. By the 9th call, I was standing beside a trash can near the security entrance, trying not to throw up. By the 17th, I had opened every pocket in my bags on the airport floor. By the 23rd, a woman in a navy blazer and airline badge knelt beside me and said, "Mom, let's move you over here." Her name tag said Noreen Price. I remember that because she said my name like it mattered. "Dr. Calloway?" she asked, looking at my boarding pass. I nodded. "Come with me. Bring your things." She led me to a customer service counter near a closed coffee kiosk. She did not ask me if I was sure. She did not tell me to calm down. She put my carry-on behind the counter and said, "Tell me the last place you had it." "The airline counter." They scanned it. I put it in my wallet. "What kind of wallet?" "Gray leather." "Travel wallet." "Who was with you?" "My parents." She looked at me carefully. "Are they still here?" I called again in front of her. No answer. Noreen typed something into her computer. "Your passport was scanned at 6:42. I stared at the screen. She turned it slightly so I could see without touching anything. There it was. My name. The scan time. The flight number. "At least we know you had it when you checked in," she said. I did not know yet why that mattered. I just knew somebody had said we. Noreen helped me file an airport incident report. She called airport police, who took coots but looked at me with the tired expression of people who hear panic all day. She gave me a printed copy of the scan confirmation and told me to keep it with the report. "Make copies," she said. "Take pictures. Email them to yourself." "My father took it," I said. The words came out flat. Noreen did not react the way I expected. She did not widen her eyes. She did not say "surely not." She said, "Then you need records more than feelings right now." That was the first useful sentence anyone gave me that morning. I missed the flight. At 8:47, while boarding was still happening without me, Bennett texted, "Maybe take the hint." I looked at the message until the letters blurred. Then I called my mother again. No answer. My father again. 31 calls total. Not one voicemail returned. Around 10, Noreen brought me coffee from the reopened kiosk. She placed it beside a stack of brown paper napkins. "Do you have someone else you can call?" she asked. I thought about that. For one humiliating second, I could not think of anyone. My whole life had been arranged around being available to people who were not available back. Then I remembered Dr. Asha Varghese, the fellowship coordinator in Copenhagen. She had emailed me twice with practical details, once with instructions about my arrival paperworks, and once to say she had heard good things from my attending physician. I called her from Noreen's desk phone because my cell battery was dying. It was afternoon in Denmark. "This is Asha," she said. I explained him badly. I know I did. I said passport, father, missing, flight, fellowship. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Please don't give away the position." Asha listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Serena, are you safe?" I closed my eyes. It was the first question that did not make me feel accused. "Yes." "Good. Then we solve one thing at a time. You will contact the embassy. I will contact the fellowship board. You will not lose your place because someone else behaved badly. Someone else behaved badly. Not because I was careless. Not because I was dramatic. Not because good daughters stayed. Someone else." After the call, I sat at a small table near the coffee kiosk, with my bags crowded around my knees. The brown napkins were rough under my hand. I took a pen from my bag and wrote one word: watch. I did not write fight. I did not write prove. I did not write dad. I wrote watch, because my grandmother had taught me that people revealed themselves most clearly when they thought nobody important was looking. Then I folded the napkin and put it inside the fellowship folder. I did not go back to my parents' house. Noreen helped me find a hotel shuttle. She wrote her direct office number on the back of a baggage claim envelope and said, "If anyone says the passport was never here, call me." At the hotel, I took pictures of every document: the airport report, the scan time, Bennett's text, the call log with 31 outgoing calls. At 6:13 that evening, my father finally called. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Where are you?" he asked. "No hello, no concern." "At a hotel. Why?" "My passport disappeared after you hugged me." Silence. Then he sighed. That sigh told me more than a confession would have. "Serena," he said, "you were upset. You probably misplaced it. I had it at the counter. It was scanned. You've always been careless when you're emotional." I sat on the edge of the hotel bed. The comforter had a cigarette burn near the corner, even though it was a non-smoking room. "Where is my passport?" "I don't know. Did you take it? Listen to yourself." His voice dropped. I did what I had to do. There it was. Not the whole truth, just enough of it. I hit record halfway through the call. That part did not capture the first sentence, but it captured the second one. "You are my daughter," he said. "You don't get to just fly away because some hospital filled your head. I'm still going." "No, you're not." "I am. You'll come home tomorrow. Your mother is worried sick." Mom ignored 31 calls. She was upset. So was I. You caused that. I looked at the folded napkin on the table. "Watch. I need my passport. You need perspective." I hung up. My hands shook so badly afterward that I had to press them between my knees. I did not sleep much. By morning, Asha had sent embassy instructions, a letter confirming my fellowship position, and the name of a staff member who could help with temporary arrival housing if I was delayed. Noreen called too. "I checked lost and found," she said. "Nothing. I didn't think there would be." "No," she said. I didn't either. It took almost 3 weeks to get an emergency replacement and new travel clearance. 3 weeks where my father told relatives I had gotten cold feet. 3 weeks where my mother left messages that sounded like concern if you ignored what she refused to say. "Baby, just come home. Your daddy is hurt too. This has gotten so out of hand." Bennett sent one message. "Denmark will still be there when you're done punishing everyone. I saved them all." When I finally landed in Copenhagen, it was raining. Not dramatic rain. Thin, steady rain that made the airport windows look blurred. Asha met me at arrivals holding a paper sign with my name. Not doctor, not Calloway. Serena. She was shorter than I expected, with silver-streaked hair pulled back and a red scarf tucked into her coat. She took one of my suitcases before I could protest. "Welcome," she said. "You must be exhausted." "I'm sorry I'm late. You are here. That was all." She drove me to a small furnished apartment near the hospital. There was bread on the counter, yogurt in the refrigerator, and a transit card beside the keys. "I didn't know what you eat," she said. "So I got ordinary things that almost broke me." My family had made my leaving sound like betrayal. This woman who barely knew me had bought bread. For the first year, I worked like someone trying to outrun a locked door. I arrived early. I stayed late. I learned Danish medical phrases badly and apologized often. I studied surgical notes until my eyes hurt. I called my grandmother every Sunday. I called my mother less. I stopped calling my father unless there was a reason. He did not apologize. He did not mention the passport unless he was denying it. Whenever I tried to say the words, he talked over me. "You had a breakdown. You embarrassed your mother. You made your choice." That became the family story. Serena panicked at the airport. Serena blamed Daddy. Serena ran away anyway. At Christmas that year, my mother mailed me a package with socks, pralines, and a card signed Love, Mom and Daddy. My father had written under her message, "When you are ready to be reasonable, call." I put the card in a drawer with the airport report. The napkin stayed inside my medical textbook. Sometimes, after a long shift, I would open the book and see that one word in my own handwriting, watch. It did not feel strong. It felt like a reminder not to argue with people who were still benefiting from the lie. 2 years after the airport, grandmother Eleanor died. She was 85, and she went in her sleep in the White House outside Savannah. Aunt Deirdre found her after she did not answer the phone. My father called me at 3 a.m. Copenhagen time. "Your grandmother is gone," he said. For once, his voice sounded small. I flew back for the funeral. No one mentioned the last time I had been in an airport with my father. My mother hugged me too long at baggage claim. My father stood beside her, hands in his pockets. "You look thin," he said. "Good to see you too." His mouth tightened. "Don't start." Bennett arrived the next day in a leased black SUV with Lexi, who wore a wide-brimmed hat to the funeral and took pictures of the oak trees for her. Social media before the service started. The funeral program had a photo of grandmother Eleanor at 60, standing on the porch with one hand on the railing, looking like she knew exactly what you were about to say, and had already decided whether it was. Foolish. I sat in the second row, my father sat in the first. I cried when he gave the eulogy. Real tears, I think. He talked about legacy, family, duty, land, and sacrifice. He said his mother had taught him that Calloway's took care of their own. Aunt Deirdre looked down at her program. I noticed. After the graveside service, everyone went back to the house. People brought ham, deviled eggs, pound cake, and stories. My mother moved through the kitchen receiving casseroles like donations to a museum of grief. I escaped to grandmother's study. It still smelled like dust, furniture polish, and the peppermint candies she kept in the top drawer. Her desk faced the window. The blue ceramic bowl was there, empty now. I touched the edge of it. That was when I heard voices in the hallway. My father said, "Where did she keep the trust papers?" Aunt Deirdre said, "Calvin, not today. Don't tell me not today. The lawyer will drag this out if I let her. She just died and left a mess." I stepped back from the door. My father came in carrying a blue folder. He stopped when he saw me. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then he smiled. "Serena, didn't know you were in here." I was saying goodbye. His hand tightened on the folder. I looked at it. He noticed me looking. "Just some old insurance papers," he said. I nodded. Aunt Deirdre appeared behind him, pale and tense. She looked at the folder, then at me, then away. I filed that away. The next morning, before I flew back, a woman approached me outside the house while I was loading my suitcase into a rideshare. She was maybe in her late 60s, with a neat gray bob and a black coat that looked expensive but old. She carried a slim leather briefcase. "Dr. Calloway?" "Yes, Miriam Keene. I was your grandmother's estate attorney." I shook her hand. "I remember your name. Eleanor spoke of you often." That hurt in a place I had kept covered all weekend. Miriam glanced toward the house. My father was inside, arguing with Bennett about something near the dining room. She lowered her voice. "Did your father ever apologize for the airport?" Everything in me went still. "What did she tell you?" "Enough," Miriam said, and not as much as she wanted to. I did not speak. Miriam opened her briefcase and removed a sealed envelope. My full name was written across the front in grandmother Eleanor's slanted handwriting. Dr. Serena May Calloway. "She instructed me to give this to you after her death," Miriam said. "Privately." "What is it? A clean copy." "Of what?" "Read it when you are not in this driveway." My rideshare pulled up. Miriam placed the envelope in my hand. "And Serena?" I looked at her. "If your father starts selling things, call me before you answer him." She walked back toward the house before I could ask anything else. I read the envelope in my hotel room near the airport. Inside was a copy of the Calloway Family Trust Amendment, signed 3 years before grandmother Eleanor died. There were tabs, initials, notary seals, and a handwritten note. "Serena, your father believes control is the same as care. It is not. If this paper is ever needed, you will know." I read the first page, then the second. Then one sentence on the third page made me sit down slowly on the edge of the bed. I will not explain that sentence yet, the way I understood it then. because at the time, even I did not understand all of it. I only knew my grandmother had put my name somewhere my father would not expect it. I put the copy back in the envelope. Then I took out my phone and photographed every page. When I returned to Copenhagen, I placed the envelope in a locked drawer with the airport report, the passport replacement records, my father's partial voicemail, Bennett's texts, and the napkin. Watch. Years passed. That is the part people sometimes skip in stories, but years matter. Years are where your nervous system learns whether the door is really locked. I became an attending physician. I moved from the small fellowship apartment into a place with pale floors, big windows, and a radiator that clanked in winter. I learned which bakery opened earliest after night shift. I learned to bike in rain. I learned how to say hard things to parents without making them feel blamed. Asha became more than a mentor. She became the person who noticed when I had not eaten. She invited me to dinner with her wife, Lena, and never made it a big emotional announcement. Just, we made too much soup. Later, when I finally told her more about the airport, she did not ask why I had not told her sooner. She said, "You told me when you could." That was enough. My family became a weather pattern I checked, but no longer lived inside. My mother sent holiday messages. My father sent articles about American doctors returning home because real impact starts in your own community. Bennett sent nothing unless he wanted something. Then he sent voice messages that began with, "Hey stranger," like silence had been mutual. He had become a developer by then, which sounded more stable than what it was. He bought small properties, renamed them things like the Juniper Lofts, and talked about revitalization with people whose grandparents had been priced out of those neighborhoods. My father invested in him. Then he got other people to invest in him. Then he started talking about the family land in ways that made my mother's voice tight when she thought I could not hear it. In the 6th year after the airport, my mother called on a Sunday. I was making tea. It was dark outside, even though it was only late afternoon. "Your brother's under a lot of pressure," she said. "That seems to happen often." "Serena, what does he need?" she said. "Why do you always assume somebody needs something? Because you only call like this when they do," I thought. But I said, "What's going on? It's complicated." That meant money. "Is he in debt?" "Your father has it handled." That meant yes. I looked toward the locked drawer across the room. Handled how? Family business. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because those 2 words had covered so many messes I could have embroidered them on a pillow. "Mom, what does that mean?" "It means your father is doing what he has to do." The same phrase from the airport. I did what I had to do. My fingers tightened around the mug. "What is he selling?" Silence. Then too quickly, no one said anything about selling. I set the mug down. There are pauses that answer before the person does. 2 months later, an email came from my father. Subject line, "Family Trust Meeting." The message was short. "Serena, we need you home for a brief meeting regarding routine trust paperwork. Since you have chosen to live abroad, this needs to be handled efficiently. Your mother would like to see you. Bennett and I have arranged the date around your schedule as best we can." Dat attached was a PDF. The file name was not Routine Trust Partwork. It was Callaway Sale Packet A3. I sat very still at my kitchen table. Outside, a delivery bike bell rang twice on the street below. I opened the attachment. The first pages were ordinary enough to someone who wanted them to be ordinary. Cover page, property description, proposed sale, closing location, Southeastern Fiduciary Bank and title, closing room B, downtown Savannah. Then I saw a consent page. My name was typed under a signature line, Dr. Serena May Callaway. Below it, in smaller print, was language stating that I had reviewed the proposed sale and agreed in principle to execute final documents at closing. There was a signature above my typed name. It looked like mine at first. Then it didn't. I enlarged the PDF. My stomach went cold, but my hand stayed steady. The signature had an old loop in the S I had stopped using years before. It looked like the signature from my Georgia medical licensing forms, not my current one. The date beside it was March 18. On March 18, I had worked a 12-hour pediatric cardiac clinic shift in Copenhagen. I knew because a child named Emil had drawn a purple dinosaur on the corner of his discharge paper And I had joked with Asha that every hospital in the world had children drawing animals during stressful conversations. I had signed 16 consent review notes that day in the hospital system. I had not been in Georgia. I had not signed a trust document. The notary block was from Chatham County, Georgia. I printed the page and placed it beside the trust amendment from grandmother Eleanor's envelope. Then I called Miriam Keene. She answered on the second ring. "Miriam, this is Serena Calloway. I wondered when I would hear from you. They sent me a sale packet." "I know." I paused. "How? Your father's new counsel requested documents from my office and represented that all interested parties were aware. I was not satisfied with the representation." "That sounds polite." It was not meant politely. I looked at the consent page. "There's a signature page in here. I expected there might be. It is not mine." Miriam was quiet for half a breath. "Are you willing to attend the closing?" "Should I?" "That depends on what you want." "I want him to put the lie somewhere it can't walk away." Miriam did not respond immediately. Then she said, "Bring your records." "I have them." "I thought you might." The closing was scheduled for June 6. 7 years after the airport, almost to the season, I flew into Savannah instead of Atlanta. I did not tell my parents which hotel. I did not let my father pick me up. Asha drove me to the airport in Copenhagen. Before I got out, she handed me a small paper bag. "Bread and cheese," she said. "Airport food is terrible everywhere." I smiled. "That's very European of you. That is very human of me." Then her face softened. "You do not have to convince people who already know what they did." I looked down at my hands. I keep thinking my mother might say something. She might. I nodded. Asha touched my shoulder once. And she might not. That was the part I carried onto the plane. In my carry-on, inside a black document folder, I had the trust amendment, the airport incident report, the passport scan time, the emergency passport paperwork, screenshots of the 31 calls, Bennett's text, the voicemail transcript, my hospital shift logs from March 18, entry and exit records, and the old napkin folded inside a plastic sleeve. Watch, it had faded some. The ink had bled at one corner from the coffee ring on the table that day. At the Savannah Hotel, I slept badly. At 3 in the morning, I woke up and checked the folder. At 4, I checked again. At 5, I stopped pretending and made coffee. My mother texted at 7. "Your father says we can pick you up." I wrote back. "No, thank you. I will meet you there." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "He just wants this to be smooth." I looked at that sentence for a long time. Then I wrote, "So do I." Southeastern Fiduciary Bank and title was on the 14th floor of a glass building that overlooked the river. The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and expensive coffee. There was a security desk with a brass lamp and a receptionist who asked for my ID. I handed over my passport, my new one. The woman glanced at it, then at me. "Dr. Calloway." "Yes. They're expecting you in closing room B." Of course they were. Closing room B had glass walls with frosted stripes across the middle, just high enough to blur faces, but not bodies. Inside was a long walnut table, leather chairs, a silver coffee urn, bottled water, and a tray of untouched pastries. My father sat at the head of the table. He had chosen the seat before I arrived. My mother sat to his right in a cream blouse and pearls. Bennett sat beside her, scrolling his phone too aggressively. He had gained weight in the face and lost none of his confidence. Aunt Deirdre sat near the far end with her purse in her lap, hands folded around the strap. There were others too. Joel Rask, the title officer, introduced himself with a firm handshake and nervous eyes. A buyer's attorney named Ms. Lanier sat with a stack of marked documents. A bank vice president, Mr. Houghton, wore a navy suit and looked like he had already decided this meeting should have been an email. Bennett's real estate agent, Corinne, smiled at me with the bright panic of someone who needed commission badly. And near the window, quietly setting a blue folder on the table, was Miriam Keene. My father did not look at her. That told me he knew she was a problem. "Serena," he said, standing with his arms open. I did not move into them. He let his arms drop after a second. "Daddy," I said, his jaw shifted. My mother stood and hugged me. She smelled like the same lavender hand cream. For 1 second, I was back at the airport. "You look good," she whispered. "So do you." She held on just a little too long. Then she said so quietly I almost missed it, "Please don't make this harder." I pulled back. There it was. Not I'm sorry. Not, are you okay? Please don't make this harder. I took the empty seat across from my father. Not beside him. Across. Bennett smirked. Glad you could fit us in between surgeries. I'm glad you could spell my name right on the paperwork. His smirk flickered. My father tapped the table once. Let's keep this civil. Miriam looked at me over the top of her glasses. Her expression did not change. Joel cleared his throat. Good morning, everyone. We are here regarding the proposed sale of the Callaway Trust property located outside Savannah. There are several signature requirements, and I understand there have been some questions regarding consent authority. So before we proceed— There aren't questions, my father interrupted. There is family drama. The room stilled politely. Joel blinked. Mr. Callaway, I understand. No, I don't think you do. My father leaned back. My daughter has lived overseas for years. She has been distant, and frankly, she has made routine matters more difficult than necessary. But she understands the importance of this sale. I looked at the coffee urn. Steam curled from the top. I did not answer. My father kept going, because silence has always made controlling people nervous. This property has been in our family for generations, he said. Maintaining it is expensive. My son has business obligations tied to future development in the area. My wife and I are not getting younger. This sale is the responsible choice. Bennett nodded like a board member. Miss Lanier wrote something on her pad. Miriam did not move. My father turned to me with a smile that belonged in a Christmas card. So Shrina knows that. I looked at him. Do I? His face tightened. Don't start. There it was again. The old command. Do not name what I am doing. Do not disturb the room. Do not make me look like the person I am being. My mother's fingers moved toward her necklace. Bennett leaned forward. Can we not do this? Some of us have actual money riding on this. That seems unwise, I said. His eyes narrowed. Excuse me. To have actual money riding on a sale before all required parties have agreed. My father laughed once. Required parties. Listen to you. Joel cleared his throat again. That is actually what we need to clarify. My father turned on him. The family is aligned. Aunt Deirdre made a tiny sound. Not a word, almost a cough. I looked at her. She looked away. Miriam opened the blue folder. My father noticed and said, Miriam, with respect, you no longer represent the trust. With respect, Miriam said, that is not accurate. It was the first time anyone besides me had corrected him in public that morning. The room shifted. My mother leaned toward my father. Calvin. He ignored her. Miriam has always enjoyed complicating things, he said, smiling at the others. My mother trusted her, but my mother also kept expired coupons in alphabetical order. Loyalty is not the same as judgment. Miriam did not blink. That was her gift. Joel looked down at his documents. Before we proceed with final signatures, we need to address the consent page provided in the packet. My father waved one hand. Serena agreed in principle. She gets nervous when family business becomes official. That's all this is. I waited. He had almost reached the sentence I needed. Marlene whispered, Calvin, maybe we should stop. Every part of me turned toward her. It was so quiet I was not sure anyone else heard. My father looked at her. What? Her face had gone pale. Her eyes moved to the consent page in front of Joel, then to me. For 1 second, my mother looked like she might step out from behind him. Then Bennett said, Mom, come on. My father's stare held. Marlene swallowed. Then she turned to me. She said, Please don't embarrass us. I felt something is inside me settle, not break, settle. Waiting for my mother to save me had been its own kind of cage. I nodded once, not because I agreed, but because I understood. My father took my nod as surrender. That was his mistake. He leaned forward, palms flat on the table. She's my daughter. I know what she means even when she won't say it. The pen in Miriam's hand stopped moving. Joel looked up. Miss Lanier's expression sharpened. I looked at my father and said, Could you repeat that? He frowned. What? What you just said, Serena. You said you know what I mean even when I won't say it. This is exactly what I mean, he snapped. You twist everything. I turned to Joel. Is that the position being relied on for this closing? Joel's ears went pink. I would not characterize it that way. Good. My father's voice dropped. Do not talk around me. I opened my folder. Not dramatically. I just unzipped it and removed the printed sale packet. My father watched my hands. For the first time all morning, he looked uncertain. I placed the consent page in front of me. This page, I said to Joel, "Is this the document you believe shows my prior consent?" Joel adjusted his glasses. "It was included in the packet provided to our office, yes." "Was it represented as signed by me?" "Yes." "Who submitted it?" My father said. "I handled the paperwork because you were impossible to reach." There it was. The room heard it. I looked down at the page. "Impossible to reach," I repeated. Bennett groaned. "Oh my God." I turned one page in my folder and removed my hospital shift log from March 18. Then I removed my passport entry record. Then a copy of my current signature from a notarized hospital appointment form. I did not slide them forward yet. First, I looked at Miriam. She gave the slightest nod. Miriam turned to Joel. "Mr. Rask, before this consent page is discussed further, I recommend reading Section 7, subsection C of the amended Callaway Family Trust dated May 22, signed by Eleanor Rose Callaway and witnessed in my office." My father said, "That amendment is not controlling." Miriam looked at him. "It is." Two's no anger, just fact. Joel took the document she handed him. He read silently at first. Then his eyebrows drew together. Miss Lanier leaned closer. The bank vice president sat back slowly, as if creating distance from the table might protect him. Joel cleared his throat. Section 7, subsection C, he read, states that no sale, transfer, encumbrance, or long-term lease of trust real property shall be valid without the voluntary written consent of Dr. Serena May Callaway, such consent to be verified in person or through independent counsel. In the event of attempted coercion, concealment, or fraudulent representation of consent, Dr. Callaway shall have authority to request immediate fiduciary review and temporary suspension of trustee. Control pending investigation. The room went very quiet, not silent like people had nothing to say. Silent like everyone had suddenly realized there was a cliff under the carpet. My father stared at the document, then at Miriam, then at me. "What is this?" he said. Miriam closed the folder. "Your mother's amendment, I never saw that." "No," Miriam said. "You saw a blue folder you removed from her study after the funeral. You did not see my executed original." Aunt Deirdre whispered, "Calvin." He turned on her. "Don't," but her face had changed. Aunt Deirdre looked at Joel, not at my father. "I saw him take the blue folder," she said, "after the service, from Mama's desk." My father's mouth opened. No sound came out. Bennett looked between them. "Dad?" My mother closed her eyes. I finally slid my papers forward. "This consent page is dated March 18, I said. "I was in Copenhagen that day. I worked a 12-hour clinic shift at Rigshospitalet from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. local time. These are hospital access logs and signed chart records from that day. This is my passport record showing I was not in the United States. This is my current notarized signature. The signature on that constantage appears to match an old medical licensing form I filed in Georgia years ago." Joel did not touch the papers at first. Then he pulled them closer with 2 fingers like they might be hot. Miss Lanier leaned in, read the date, and said something under her breath that sounded like "absolutely not." Bennett's face drained. "Dad, what is she talking about?" My father recovered enough to scoff. "She is making accusations because she resents this family." I looked at him. I asked who submitted it. "You answered." He pointed at me. "You have been waiting to do this." "No," I said. "I have been waiting for you to stop." That was one of the few sentences I had not planned. It came out quieter than I expected. My father's eyes flashed. "After everything I did for you?" Miriam said, "Mr. Callaway, I advise you to stop speaking." He ignored her. "I raised you. I paid for school." "You paid for 1 semester of undergrad," I said. "Grandma paid for the rest, and I had loans." His face reddened. My mother whispered, "Serena, please." I looked at her. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not fragile. Smaller because the story she had lived inside was shrinking around her. "Mom," I said, "did you know he had my passport?" She pressed her lips together. My father said, "Do not answer that." I did not look away from her. "Did you know?" Her eyes filled. I knew he was upset. "That is not what I asked." She put one hand over her mouth. That was the answer. But then she gave me more. "He said you needed time to think," she whispered. Bennett muttered, "Jesus." My father slammed his palm on the table. The pastries jumped on the tray. "This is ridiculous," he said. "A passport? From 7 years ago? We are here to discuss a sale." I removed the airport incident report. "We are discussing a pattern." I placed it beside the consent page. The passport was scanned at 6:42 a.m. before security. It disappeared after you hugged me. I called you and Mom 31 times. You did not answer. That evening you told me, and I quote, "I did what I had to do." My father went still. The bank vice president looked at Miss Lanier. Bennett looked at me like he had never seen me before. Maybe he hadn't. I did not play the audio. I did not need to. Miriam had a certified transcript. She slid it to Joel. "This is not a criminal proceeding," she said calmly, "but it is relevant to the trust's coercion provision." Joel removed his glasses and rubbed his forehead. Miss Lanier closed her binder. "My client will not proceed today," she said. Corinne, the realtor, made a small wounded noise. "Maybe we can take a short break?" "No, Miss Lanier said. "We cannot." Mr. Hoot, the bank vice president, stood. "Pending fiduciary review, the bank will freeze any transaction activity connected to this proposed sale." Bennett stood too. "Wait, freeze? What does freeze mean?" "It means," Miriam said, "your father no longer gets to treat uncertain authority as permission." My father pointed at her. "You poisoned my mother against me." Miriam's voice stayed even. "Eleanor loved you. She did not trust you with Serena's freedom." That was the sentence that changed his face. Not the legal language, not the failed sale, that. Because it meant his mother had seen him, my father turned to me slowly. "You did this," he said. I looked at the consent page. "No, I came prepared for what you did." He laughed, but it cracked halfway through. "You think these people care about you? You think this lawyer cares? You think that hospital over there cares? You are embarrassing your family in front of strangers." I looked around the room. Joel, who had gone pale. Miss Lanier, whose binder was closed. Miriam, whose hand rested on the blue folder. Aunt Deirdre, crying silently. My mother, staring at her lap. Bennett, furious for the first time at the right person, but only because it had cost him something. "They are not strangers to the paperwork," I said. "That is what matters today." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Joel said, "The closing is terminated, not postponed, terminated." The word landed in the room with a clean, hard sound. My father sat back like someone had pushed him. Bennett turned on him immediately. "You told me this was done." My father glared. "Sit down." "No, you told me her consent was hand." "Bennett, I have investors waiting." "That is not my problem," I said. Bennett looked at me. "You have no idea what you just did." "I have a very clear idea. You're going to ruin me over some old fight with Dad." I put the airport report back in my folder. "No, you made promises against property you did not control." His face twisted. "You always thought you were better than us." "No," I said. "I thought paperwork meant something. A ridiculous sentence, maybe. But in that room, it was enough." My mother stood unsteadily. "Can we just talk privately?" she asked. "Please, we can fix this as a family." There was the pivot, not denial now, not scolding, family. My father heard it and grabbed onto it. "Yes," he said, turning his voice soft. "Baby girl, come on, this got out of hand. We were trying to protect you from being dragged into complicated matters." Baby girl. He had not called me that since I was small enough to believe it. I zipped my folder closed. "You forged my consent." His expression hardened, then softened again when he remembered the room. "I never meant to hurt you. You took my passport. I was scared. You ignored 31 calls. Your mother was crying. You submitted a signature that was not mine." His mouth worked. No sentence came. Miriam stood. "Dr. Calloway, we can file the fiduciary review request this afternoon." My father looked at her, then at me. "You would remove me?" "I am requesting independent review." "You would take your own father's authority." I stood. "No," I said. "You spent years confusing authority with ownership. I am correcting the file." My mother started crying then, not loudly, quiet, exhausted tears. For years, those tears had pulled me back into rooms where I was expected to apologize for noticing the furniture was on fire. This time, I did not move toward her. That was hard. I want to be honest about that. It was harder than facing my father, because my father's cruelty had edges. My mother's helplessness seeped under doors. "Serena," she said, "please don't leave like this." I looked at her. "The last time I left with both of you there, my passport disappeared." She flinched. My father snapped. "Enough." I turned to him. For 7 years, I had imagined what I might say if he ever admitted it. I had imagined anger. I had imagined a speech. I had imagined asking why. But standing there in closing room B, with the sale dead and the papers stacked between us, I did not want a confession anymore. I wanted distance. He took one step toward me. Miriam moved slightly, not blocking him, just making it clear she was watching. He stopped. "You are still my daughter," he said. I nodded, yes. His eyes searched my face for the old reflex, the one that answered guilt with service, the one that mistook being needed for being loved. "You said good daughters don't leave," I said. I stayed long enough to say no. Nobody spoke. Not my mother, not Bennett, not my father. I picked up my folder and walked out. In the hallway, the receptionist looked up from her desk. I realized then that my hands were shaking. Not visibly to anyone else, maybe, but I felt it. Miriam came out a minute later. She did not ask if I was okay. I appreciated that. She said, "I have a conference room available downstairs. We can make copies there." I nodded. In the elevator, Aunt Deirdre slipped in just before the doors closed. Her face was blotchy from crying. "I should have said something years ago," she said. I looked at the numbers above the door, 14, 13, 12. "Yes," I said. She inhaled sharply, like she had expected comfort. "I did not give it. I was afraid of him," she said. "I know. That doesn't excuse it." "No," I said, "it doesn't." The elevator opened. She did not follow us to the conference room. Miriam and I spent 2 hours making the cleanest record I had ever seen outside a hospital. Notice of fiduciary review. Objection to proposed sale. Statement regarding disputed consent. Request for temporary suspension of trustee transaction authority. Miriam worked with quiet speed, no drama, no outrage, just documents, signatures, copies, timestamps. At one point, she looked at my folder and said, "Your grandmother chose well." I looked down. I wish she had told me. "She wanted you to live your life without waiting for your father's next move." I thought about that. Then I opened the plastic sleeve and took out the napkin. Miriam looked at it. "Airport?" she asked. I nodded. "She told me to watch people," I said. Miriam smiled faintly. "That sounds like Eleanor." By the end of the day, the proposed sale was formally stopped. The buyer withdrew within 48 hours. The bank froze the related transaction path. The trust entered independent fiduciary review. Calvin's authority over the property was suspended pending investigation. Bennett's investors found out before the week ended. I know because he called me 12 times in one afternoon. I did not answer. Then he texted, "You don't understand what this is going to cost me." I wrote back once, "I understand you promised what you did not own." Then I blocked him. My mother left voicemails. The first was crying. The second was defensive. The third was quiet. "I should have stopped him," she said. I listened to that one twice. Not because it fixed anything. It did not. But because it was the closest she had ever come to telling the truth without wrapping it in my responsibility. I did not call her back. I sent one message. "I am communicating through counsel about the trust. I am not available for family conversations right now," she wrote. "For how long?" I typed 3 different answers. Then I deleted them all. I wrote, "I don't know." That was honest. My father did not text for 2 days. Then he sent one email. Subject, "Your grandmother would be ashamed." I did not open it. Miriam read it instead because it related to the trust. She called me afterward and said, "He should not put certain things in writing." That was all. The independent fiduciary review uncovered what I had suspected, and more than I wanted to know. Calvin had used trust distributions as collateral in conversations where he had no authority to do so. Bennett had represented the property as committed to sale in investor materials. My mother had signed 2 household financial statements she later claimed she did not read. Aunt Deirdre gave a statement about the blue folder. The notary on the consent page denied ever seeing me. I did not need to make my father look bad. The record was busy enough. 3 months later, an independent fiduciary replaced him for all real property decisions. The Savannah land was not sold to rescue Bennett. Portions of it were leased conservatively, with proceeds managed properly for the beneficiaries. Miriam kept me informed only when necessary. I returned to Copenhagen a week after the closing. At the airport, I stood in the security line with my passport in my hand until the officer waved me forward. I did not put it in the outer pocket of my tote. I did not let anyone else hold it. On the plane, I opened the black folder and looked at the napkin one more time. Watch. For 7 years, I thought that word meant watch them, watch the lie, watch the pattern, watch the hands near the bag, watch the signatures, watch the folder, But somewhere over the Atlantic, with the cabin lights dimmed and a child sleeping across the aisle, it meant something else leaves. Watch yourself not turn back. When I got home, Asha and Lena had left soup in my refrigerator. There was a note taped to the container. Eat first. Explain later if you want. I stood in my kitchen and cried harder over that note than I had cried in closing room B. A week later, Asha invited me to dinner. There were 6 of us around her table. Someone had brought bread. Someone else had brought flowers from a corner shop. No one asked for the whole story before passing me a plate. No one told me what forgiveness required. No one said family was complicated in that tone people use when they mean you should accept ours because it came from someone older. Asha asked, "Do you want the chair near the window?" I said yes. That was all. Months passed. The calls slowed. The legal updates became less frequent. My father tried once to reach me through a cousin who wrote, "Your daddy is getting older." I wrote back, "So am I." Then I stopped answering cousins too. My mother sent a birthday card with no return address, though I knew her handwriting. Inside, she wrote, "I hope you are eating enough." I sat with that card for a while. Then I put it in a drawer separate from the airport file. Not everything has to go in the evidence folder. Some things can just be sad. The family land stayed in trust. Bennett's development company folded under a name so bland I almost missed it when someone sent me the public notice. Calvin resigned from 2 local boards. My mother stopped posting family photos from the porch. Aunt Deirdre sent a short note through Miriam, saying she had told the truth because she was tired of being afraid. I did not become close to her. Truth told late still matters, but it does not erase the years it watched quietly. I kept working. That sounds too simple, but it is what happened. I returned to the hospital. I saw patients. I reviewed consent procedures. I taught younger doctors to document clearly and never let anyone rush a parent through a form they did not understand. Sometimes, when a family member spoke over a patient, I would feel my father in the room, not as a memory, as a pattern. Then I would slow my voice and say, "I need to hear from her," or "let him answer," or "Consent is not silence." Those were not speeches. They were part of the work. On the first anniversary of the stopped closing, I took the airport napkin out of its sleeve. It was fragile by then, creased soft at the folds. I did not frame it. That would have made it too important in the wrong way. I placed it inside the back cover of a new notebook Asha gave me, the kind with thick paper and a blue cloth spine. On the first page, I wrote my name and my Copenhagen address, not my father's house, not the Savannah property, mine. I still have the gray travel wallet, the one my father touched the night before the flight. For years, I could not use it. It sat in a drawer like a little locked room. Last spring, I took it with me on a trip to Lisbon with friends from the hospital. Before we left, Asha saw it on my kitchen table. "That one?" she asked. I nodded. "You sure?" I ran my thumb over the worn leather. "Yes." At the airport, I put my passport inside it, zipped it closed, and placed it in the inner pocket of my jacket. Then I bought coffee, sat by the window, and watched planes lift into the morning. No panic, no father beside me, no 31 calls. Just my name on a boarding pass and my own hand holding what belonged to me. That's my story. 2 suitcases, 31 unanswered calls, and a brown airport napkin with one word that carried me farther than my father ever meant to let me go. If someone in your life only values you when you are useful, take this as your sign to protect your papers, your peace, and your right to leave with your own name in your own hands. And if this story found you at the right time, tell me where you're listening from, and stay close to the people who show up when there is nothing to gain.